I'd like to request Dr. P.G. Ramesh, Dean, School of Engineering and Technology and Center of Excellence, Kaziranga University, to deliver the inaugural speech and introduce our honorable guest.
Thank you, Shaheen. Mr. Rajat Banerjee, National Head, Corporate Affairs at Amway India. Mr. Samar Singh Shekhawat, an eminent business management leader. Mr. Vivek Mishra from FICCI, my fellow deans, my faculty colleagues, and my dear students. A very good morning to all of you. And a very warm welcome to all to this webinar on being a self-reliant individual, and a very, very apt topic, and something that is being discussed about very widely, not only within the country, but globally as well. So, when we talk of, or when we mention this term self-reliant, self-reliance itself is one of the objectives of, am I audible, so Vivek?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you're audible. You're audible.
You're audible, sir. Very clear. We all can hear you. Thank you, sir.
I think Dr. Ramesh's signal. Yes, Dr. Ramesh is back.
I think, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're audible, sir. But I think your signal is dropping.
Yes, sir. So you can off your video, then probably we'll be able to listen you.
Come on, guys. Dr. Ramesh, we can't hear you.
Dr. Ramesh, you can carry on without your video. That will help in the bandwidth.
I think he's been muted. He looks like he's muted.
Yeah, Dr. Ramesh, you're muted.
Yeah, is it audible now?
Yep. Oh, come on. Vivek, I think you need to intervene, my friend. This is really taking too much time here.
Ramesh, we cannot hear you. You are on mute right now, but somehow you have got bandwidth problem. The network issue from outside somewhere. That would be helping you out.
Does someone have Dr. Ramesh's number? Can you call him and ask him what's the...
I'm calling right now. Shaheen, carry on. I'm calling to Ramesh. I'm calling.
Okay.
I can't hear him at all. Vivek, what's to be done? Should we continue? Should the next presentation start? Because I think we've got about 183 people online, and
193 now.
Ramesh is online. He can join in again.
Sir, we must start. Samar sir, you can please carry forward. I guess Ramesh sir have got connectivity issue because I was trying to reach cell phone.
Okay, let me help out Shaheen and Rajat as well to set the context while we wait. So students, okay, Dr. Ramesh is, I think, experiencing bandwidth problems. I think I can see he's logged in from his mobile. Dr. Ramesh, can you hear us now?
I can hear you right now.
Okay, yeah. Why don't you carry on then, Dr. Ramesh?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry for this signal problem. I was just mentioning about this context of today's webinar. when we talk of the word self-reliance itself, that is precisely one of the objectives of the professional education that the students are going through. So students who are, who have been dependent on their parents and, for their own, needs. Today, they need to, grow, and they come into a situation where they will, on graduating as young men and women, they would be able to stand on their own feet and, find a way of not just a livelihood, but a long career for themselves. So that is self-reliance, and we have been talking of this kind of self-reliance for ages. As you know, whenever some kind of education, some kind of a training, skill development that has happened, not only today, but even in the past, when we have not been talking about in these many words, but still the aim was self-reliance. So now going a step further, this self-reliance itself, when we talk of not just seeking jobs, but if you have to create jobs, then that is where we call we refer to as entrepreneurship. So when we create jobs and not just we are seeking jobs, so that is entrepreneurship. And today we talk of again entrepreneurship at many forums. There are the government initiatives, there are initiatives by education institutions to promote this kind of entrepreneurship among students. In our own university, we have an entrepreneurship cell, we have an incubation center. I should say that we have incubated a startup which has now got registered as a private limited company in our which is still working out of our campus. And we have many such initiatives going on, conduct competitions, brainstorm sessions, ideation sessions, all these things go on. If you look at students across, the world over, in fact, there was a study which was done, and about 65% of the students mentioned that, they are keen to pursue entrepreneurship, right? So it may not be possible for all the 65% of students to develop or start their own, but entrepreneurship can also be practiced within the job that you are doing. In fact, what we call as intrapreneurship, right? You work like within your own organizations, which we call as intrapreneurship. So whether it is an entrepreneurship job or you work as an entrepreneur within your own company, what is important is the entrepreneurial spirit, right? The spirit of being an entrepreneur. So that is fundamental thing, and that is something which we all can develop in each one of us. What does this consist of? The entrepreneurial spirit. I do not want to take a lot of time. My time is limited. In fact, we have been a little late also in starting this session. So I would like to keep myself very brief. So from whatever I have observed with my own experience and my own reading, I would like to summarize this entrepreneurial spirit in about 4 words. I would call them 3C and 1V, right? So what are those 3 C's? Maybe you can call the first C is the creative skills. The second C are the collaborative skills. The third C is courage. And one word, V, I will come to it a little later. So you can summarize. I mean, there are people, think leaders, thought leaders who have been summarizing in, say, 3 important traits or 7 traits. You go to the internet and you will find a number of them. This, I would thought, would summarize my own notion of what I have seen and experienced in the field of entrepreneurship. So obviously, the creative skills are very important. You see, an entrepreneur is trying to solve a problem and looking at a problem as an opportunity and is trying to solve. The problem exists because the existing solutions are not an answer to that. Therefore, one obviously has to be creative, needs to think out of the box, needs to come out with innovations to the problem, the solutions which have not existed so far, and you need to come out with that. Each one of us has
this kind of a ability, the kind of creative skills, we always find some solutions to our own day-to-day problems in some way or the other, which has been creative. Now, possibly due to owing to our educational system or our, the environment, the ecosystem that we live in, possibly this creative spirit has not found an expression. You have been told very often in your examinations, so giving it has been told to you. Things the way you have been told to do is something which we have been brought in. That is the kind of an environment we have grown. So probably that has sort of smothered the the creative skills in us. So we need to become aware of this issue, and we need to unleash the kind of creative possibilities that are there in us, and each one of us got that. Next, coming to the collaborative skills. See, each one of us has got his own skills or capabilities. We have some, we are good at something, not so good at certain other things. So even if you have to build a, construct a building, there is a mason involved, there is a carpenter, there is a plumber, there is an electrician, there's a civil engineer, architect, and so many, and they're all having their own skills. They need to come together in a collaborative way, and that's how a building gets made, a building gets constructed. So same is with any business. You need to have people working together in a collaborative fashion, and that is what brings up a business as well. So collaborative skills is again much against the competitive spirit which we have been talking about in the past, which led to something which is a more distorted version of competition, which people used to call as cutthroat competition, or the rat race, is something which has to be completely eschewed. We need to replace rat race and replace this cutthroat competition with more collaborative spirit. We need to collaborate. There is a win-win situation possible in every such scenario. So try to see how we can capture that win-win situation. So that brings us to the collaborative aspect. Third, of course, is courage, right? So entrepreneurship is a leap in faith. You need to take a leap with complete faith in yourself that you will make it happen. So that calls for a great deal of courage. And I think it is possible for people again to discover the courage in themselves and be able to come out with it. This is again an issue of conditioning, issue of the system in which we have grown up, where the courage has probably taken a backseat. Compliance and being conforming to what is in the beaten track. So that is something which is more comfortable. People would not like to move out of that comfort zone, but to be able to move out of a comfort zone and to explore the unknown needs a lot of courage. And I think that courage we are all bestowed with. We all have that courage in us. I think it's only that you need to give it a chance. So with these 3 C's that I mentioned, creative skills, collaborative skills, and courage, the fourth one, of course, which I said is the letter starting with the word starting with letter V. That is the value system, right? So we have heard of people who have explorers who have explored unknown lands and created their own countries within that land. Nations have been constructed. Right? All of them have in some way or the other been some kind of entrepreneurs. After all, they had creative skills, they had collaborative skills, they had the courage, they did all that. But you see, there has been some kind of a lasting damage which has been left in societies, in communities, in nations. Was missing, right? The fourth word which was missing, that is the value system. So the entire business that we build or the entire venture that we would like to promote has to be based on a sound value system. When we talk of value system, we are actually referring to not value system in narrow domains, but we talk of value systems at a much larger global level, what we call as human values. And we all know what they are. We all are aware of what these human values are, but then these we need to give due consideration. These values are the ones which are going to create prosperity and survivability for all, not just in the present, but also going forward. They are going to make these sustainable in the future. So these value systems are needed. There are any number of examples you can think of. Ventures have been set up, huge profit-making ventures have been set up. They have flourished, they have grown, but then a very closer look at those ventures, you find somewhere they have lacked in the value system, and they have caused damage, which has been much more far-reaching than what we would like to believe. So I do not want to again take a lot of time. Each of these words can be explored in depth, and this exploration, going deeper into these words, will call for a lot of time, and a lot of discussion is possible maybe on some other occasion. Right now, without taking much of your time, I would like to welcome the speakers who are going to be speaking after me. And also there is going to be a panel discussion wherein the eminent personalities who are present here today would share a lot of valuable insights, and we would greatly benefit from their experience and thoughts. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I would like to thank once again FICCI and Amway for having participated in this along with us and given this opportunity to the students to get certain dimensions, certain insights into this very important aspect of entrepreneurship. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your encouraging words and giving us an idea to our audience on entrepreneurship and inspiring them to be future entrepreneurs and leaders. I would now like to invite Mr. Rajat Banerjee, National Head Corporate Affairs at Amway India, to speak on the government's role in the growth of entrepreneurship in India.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. We can hear you very well.
And I'd asked for my screen to be checked. Can you see what's on my screen, please?
We can see the PowerPoint presentation, entrepreneur and business mode.
All right, I can't get the single slide up. Okay, here you go. That's better. Very good morning to everybody. There's slight delay in start because of connectivity issues, but I think that's the new real that we're all getting used to. My speaking points are slightly different from what I've been introduced as. I'll be speaking more on entrepreneurship and business models with a focus on direct selling and Amway. But before I get into my presentation, I think I'd just like to go back to what Dr. Ramesh said, and I think he's really hit the nail pretty much on the head in certain ways, because it's easy to sit and talk about entrepreneurship when you have a paying job, perhaps like me, but entrepreneurship requires, like he did mention, tremendous amount of courage, tremendous amount of capacity to take on risks, and to that extent he did mention that, look, the backgrounds that we come from play a very important role. Backgrounds not just where we study, the universities where we study, but also the families we come from. And the truth is, I think majority of youth, at least from my time, I was from Commerce College, Guwahati in 1986. Around that time, the focus, and maybe even so now, maybe little lesser, but certainly the focus is to finish your studies, find a job, and once you get a job, settle down a bit, get married, have kids. So we are all caught up in the in like a chain, like on a conveyor belt of life. I think entrepreneurs are those people who really step off that conveyor belt and decide to take decisions on their own. And there again, what Dr. Ramesh mentioned is absolutely true. Because if you see over the last 60, 70 years, business ideas have come from countries where people have been more who've been encouraged to, who have the capacity and the appetite for risk, and those people who come from very protected cultures tend to be people who look for jobs. So to that extent, my presentation is a slight disconnect, because this is on one particular type of entrepreneurship, and my colleagues have helped me put together something on a slightly larger scale. So again, this slide is very theoretical, and I'm sure in some of your classes you've been through all this. You to be a risk taker, to be curious, to be able to innovate, to be hardworking, persistent, etc. Team player, adaptability. I'm sure Mr. Samar Singh, who's far more experienced than me, and now who's sitting in a place of taking decisions for startups, etc., will give us greater insight into these elements and the practicality of all this stuff. So very broadly, from my perspective, at least from the corporate perspective, we would see entrepreneurship getting into manufacturing, into distributorship, into retail, or franchising. So mine is, please understand my background. I'm coming from a FMCG background, a retail kind of a background, more specifically direct selling. So what I'm sharing is probably very much in a corner, and like I said, Mr. Singh perhaps can help us broaden our horizons and see things in a larger perspective. Well, sure, in entrepreneurship does lead to not just self-employment, but potential for employment of many others as well. And this contributes to your immediate society, as you would imagine, and also to the larger national economy, because entrepreneurs would come up with some new service, a new product, and innovation which society is in need of. And that's where we see a lot of successful entrepreneurs emerging in areas which were hitherto not really looked at. And there are plenty of examples around us right now. On a very broad, again, this is theoretical, is if you're selling products, to be selling products at a fair price, to create jobs and contribute to your community, of course, to ensure that the entire supply chain is healthy and maintained. Yeah, the staff are motivated, people who work for you, who you engage with are motivated. Entrepreneur has to maintain high standard of business ethics, and of course that includes payment of taxes. Now coming to the industry that I come from, which is direct selling, I'd just like to focus your attention on what exactly direct selling is and where we fit in the larger context of the Indian economy. So the FMCG sector is about 3.4 lakh crores. This is a figure that's there in the public domain. I'm sure you students are better informed than me, but that is the fact. And the direct selling industry is is not even 4% of that pie. Just 13,000 crores. And a growth perspective, a growth prospect rather, is similar to what is there in the FMCG market. And direct selling is pretty much the same as your FMCG retail industry, except the last mile delivery of a product to the consumer is through individuals. Could be through your neighbors, could be your family, could be your friends. It's a disruptive method for sure. So it's they're not going to be everyone rooting for it. They would be people who admire it, and there would be people who criticize it. Fair enough. That happens to every innovation as such. So if you look at this particular slide, the section above talks about a traditional retail model where a manufacturer uses advertising and public relations for his product or service to be well known, and that product or service flows through the entire logistics chain of a stockist, super stockist, wholesaler, retailer, finally to the consumer. In direct selling, of course, the manufacturer, let's say Amway, engages a direct seller, has a contract with one or more, in our context is 5.5 lakh direct sellers who then sell products to a consumer. This is a kind of a pictorial representation which you're all familiar with and which I just shared. That the product is manufactured in a factory, logistics sector then reaches it to the warehouses, and then in today's context, in your COVID times, the courier industry is playing a key role, because though people are returning to normalcy, it is going to take quite some time. And the new uh, is that a lot of people are going online. In our industry, we spend a lot of attention on developing skills of our direct sellers who help reach the products finally to the consumers. Now, if you look at the global presence of this industry, as this graph would indicate, it is about a $192 billion industry, and this gives you a sense of how the industry is growing. It's a very gradual growth because another big disruptor, e-commerce is really, taking a lot of space to the traditional retail, which includes direct selling as well. So it's steady growth, not as high as industry would want it. As this slide would indicate, India is way down. We are in number 19 in this industry. So clearly a long way to go. See, we are a very young country. We've got a large population. We are told that our upper middle class, the middle class is around 250 million. The potential should be huge for this industry. If you look at, a country like Mexico, Mexico is number 7. We're pretty much on the same socioeconomic plane, but they're way, way ahead of us. So for this industry, there's a long way to go. Asia Pacific is the leading contributor for this industry on the global context, 46% compared to 32% of North and South America and 21% of Europe. If you look at the industry in India, we came into the country in the early 90s. I did mention there's a huge potential for growth. Did mention that countries the same socioeconomic level are far ahead of us in terms of industry and size. Of course, in our context, a lot of not just global players, even Indian players. If we've been, reading about the state of the Indian economy, it's the legislative or regulatory, at times interference, at times lack of clarity, which prevents an industry from really opening up. We've been around for a long time, 20, 25 years, so we're pretty much a part of the socio-economic landscape. And we have various associations helping us bring about this clarity. This slide will give you a sense of the leading direct selling companies in India today. If you go start from it alphabetically, you have Amway, you would have Avon, Tupperware, Oriflame, Modi Care, which is an Indian company. So this is really just about 20, 25 companies, but we understand there are more than 400 players in the country. And like I did mention, it's a 13,000 crore industry. The figure has been quite healthy, 12.5% if you see this particular slide. If you see the split of gender-wise split of direct sellers, earlier years we saw more number of women, and today if you see the figures of 18, 19, it's quite stable in terms of male and female contributions of self-employment in this industry. I think this gives us a sense that while the numbers are growing, we are almost 6 million direct sellers in the country, out of which 3 million would be men, 3 million would be women. Earlier, in fact, globally also this industry is dominated by women. Global figures about 70-75% women. But obviously in the Indian context, this industry is providing a micro-entrepreneurial opportunity to both men and women. And obviously, since the job markets are kind of faltering and drying up, this industry is providing self-employment, micro-entrepreneurship opportunities, the direct selling industry. Again, if you look at this slide, it gives you a sense that the youth and in the age group of 24 to 25 to 44 is almost 70%. So clearly this is an industry which the youngsters are beginning to look at as a possible way of livelihoods. And like I did mention, there's a massive opportunity out here. 55% of this industry's turnover comes from wellness, followed by cosmetics, household goods, food and beverages, home care. So we pretty much in all context of usage, home usage on a monthly basis. Northern region, it leads, it has about 27%. East and Northeast, if we combine them, it would probably be higher than North. But as an industry, for whatever reason, there was a decision to keep Northeast as a separate section. And here I'd just like to deviate a bit and recall one FICCI event we did in Guwahati about 3.5-4 years back, where one lady from Avon stood up and said she had engaged or employed under her 50,000 women just in Northeast. So that again should share with you the potential of this particular industry, where one person who does well can then help thousands. This lady had 50,000 ladies working under her just in Northeast. So that's the spread. South is kind of depressed in terms of as a market. That is to a large extent to regulatory clarity, regulatory over enthusiasm, which saw some very severe, action against big companies, even Amway, in fact. I'll not spend too much time. I think I'm running out of my time, so I'll just skip through these slides, which are very generic, and come to more, focused ones. Like I did mention, very strong on the women entrepreneurs story. This industry, 3 million, close to 3 million women entrepreneurs are part of this industry. And we've seen instances where not just have people given up full-time jobs to join this industry. We've even seen instances where people come back from their jobs overseas to take a chance in this particular industry. And this particular moment, the COVID situation has forced companies like Amway to up their digital selling and presence to maintain their positions in the market. A few years back, KPMG along with FICCI done a report which said that, and this was about 2014, I believe. So it's dated, but still KPMG was of the view that with the right kind of regulatory environment, this industry could reach a massive 65,000 crores. We'll not get there right now. We'll be lucky to reach probably 20,000 crores. I think this figure is wrong. It can be 1.4 million because we are already 6 million people in this industry. I apologize for that. But anyway, point remains that this is an industry that has the potential to give self-employment to virtually millions across the country, particularly women. These slides are all about Amway, so I'll not take much time out here. But this slide is just to help students understand that a direct selling company like Amway is no different from FMCG company like a Unilever or Procter & Gamble, wherein a company takes the responsibility of manufacturing products, taking it through the entire supply chain. And like I said, only the last mile is different, where the product reaches the consumer through individuals. These are some photographs of the Amway plant near Madurai. As you can see, it's absolutely stunning, not just in the exterior, but in the interior as well. And Amway, we take great pride in ensuring that the quality of our products is very, very high. In fact, the manufacturing standards are pretty similar to the pharmaceutical industry. So I'm sorry I rushed through the last bit because I just realized that I was running out of time. I'd been allocated 15 minutes and I've pretty much taken up my 15 minutes. So I think I'll stop out here with just the last few thoughts that while direct selling is one form of micro entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship itself, like Dr. Ramesh pointed out, is a completely different ball game. I'm sure Mr. Singh will help us understand that a little better. I remember about 25 years back, I got a chance to start my own tea business because I come from a bit of a tea background as well. And the truth is, I must share this very honestly, I didn't have the courage because I came from a very, I guess, a cloistered and very controlled, safe background which said, if you've got a naukri, if you've got a job, why do you want to give up your job and start a business which might collapse? Yes, businesses collapse. I think globally, close to 85% businesses fail. Only 15% survive. So you need tremendous amount of courage, tremendous amount of self-belief to start something of your own. So, it's a no-brainer that, look, the future of the country is in the hand of the youth. So you people are the youth. The future of the country is in your hands. I think you need to do something that many of us didn't have the courage to break that notion of security take that chance, go out, give it your best, start an industry, join an industry, learn the ropes for 4 or 5 years, and then head out on your own, because that's the only way you will succeed in this difficult, venue of entrepreneurship. Like I said, 85% people fail perhaps. Keep that as in the back of your mind. Take those chances. All the three C's and the V that Dr. Ramesh pointed out. That is, what is going to help you survive and create a better life for yourself, future for yourself and your families and your immediate society. So I hope my presentation didn't deviate too much, but please understand, I come from a particular industry. My job was to help you understand this industry a little, and I've taken more than my time. So thank you all so very much for your attention, and I look forward to the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your informative presentation. So moving on further, we have a panel discussion with Mr. Samar Singh Shekhawat, who is a business management leader and has run profit and loss functions as part of management committees for over a decade. He also has marketing and sales experience across multiple industries. Mr. Summer has extensive experience of running both steady state and startup businesses and brands, and multicultural experience across Indian, American, British, and Dutch companies. Mr. Summer has extensive multi-industry, multi-locational experience all over India and have worked on several projects across the United States, UK, Netherlands, Middle East, Southeast Asian countries, and Nepal. Having had exposure to leadership roles from the inception of his career, Mr. Summer has built businesses across multiple categories and markets through a sharply defined strategic approach and effective execution of plans. This approach has strengthened consumer preferences in intensely competitive contexts and delivered sustained growth on revenue and profitability, creating stakeholder value and powering sustained business leadership. And we also have with us is Mr. Rajat Banerjee, who is the National Head Corporate Affairs at Amway India and has been with Amway since April 2000. He shares the task of obtaining policy clarity on direct selling, both at the center as well as state level, along with his colleagues in Amway, as well as through industry associations since mid-2011. He has led Amway's CSR efforts in 2005 and was head corporate communications and CSR between 2005 and 2011. He has done his PGD in journalism from BVB, Delhi. Prior to joining Amway, Mr. Rajat was a journalist for 8 years in Delhi, 3 years with The Statesman, Delhi, and 5 years with Down to Earth, a publication from the Center of Science and Environment. We welcome both the panelists and hope that the students would have a wonderful experience interacting with them. So Mr. Summer, can you start by giving us a brief on the Indian economy pre-COVID and post-COVID? The Indian economy was already slowing down pre-COVID. So can you give us a brief idea and help us understand the economic situation in the current times as compared to the pre-COVID era?
Okay, Shaheen, thank you for the introduction, and Rajat, thank you for what an outstanding and highly informative introduction to the world of direct selling and Amway. For me, certainly, it was an eye-opener in terms of the revenues that are being generated, in terms of the employment that has been generated, and in terms of the scale and size of operations. It was such a refreshing piece of value addition to my knowledge base for today. So thank you for that, Rajat. Thank you, Kaziranga University, for this opportunity. And thank you, Fiki, Vivek, and the team for giving me this opportunity. Shaheen, you've asked, well, a question that needs probably a year to answer, but since I have a few minutes, I will try and do my best. If you look at a pre-COVID world, I think globally, the economy has sort of really not been doing well. If you look at the major powers, the USA and China are engaged in trade wars across the world. Western Europe is always threatened by Russia, and East Europe is sort of the buffer. You have banana republics like Brazil, many other countries in Africa and Latin America. You have the so-called growing tiger and the future of the world in Southeast Asia. You have China, which nobody seems to know what the truth is in China. But when we see evidence on the ground of Chinese products and Chinese investment in technology and infrastructure all over the world, including, by the way, in the United States, including in India, including in Africa, um, you see China dominating global supply chains. I think the days of conventional war are over. Even though there could be minor threats and minor skirmishes, all the wars now are economic wars. And if you're a climate change activist, then all the wars will now be water wars and global warming, etc. So it's a complex situation as far as the big superpowers are concerned. Of course, there are pockets of regional disturbances as well. The South China Sea, for instance, which is, with trade embargoes and tariffs, and you'll notice that the larger superpowers have a vested interest in the smaller countries as well. China practically owns Pakistan. If China and to a lesser extent the United States were to stop, funding Pakistan, their economy will collapse in 1 week. So there's a price to be paid for choosing that side. On the other hand, America is in turmoil, not only economically, but because of COVID. And even prior to COVID, I think the situation was not good with unemployment. In the first few years of the Bush administration, I think unemployment sort of came to a 67-year low. But the last 1 or 2 years have been pretty bad. Western Europe and, well, largely Europe is actually badly affected with Brexit. I think a lot of people who voted for Brexit didn't fully understand the implications of Brexit. And you see, Shaheen, you see the rise of right-wing nationalism across the world, whether it's in the United States, in France with Marine Le Pen, Brazil with Jair Bolsonaro, Putin in Russia, Xi Jinping in China, and our own supreme leader in our country, Turkey, Duterte in the Philippines, Erdogan in Turkey. So the rise of right-wing nationalism, which in many cases defines geopolitical imperatives, and that defines economic policy. So, tariffs, taxes on goods coming in, everyone wants a trade surplus, nobody wants a trade deficit. So it's complex, but if you were to ask me, the one underlying phenomenon, I think, is a rise of right-wing nationalism being couched as patriotism, and that defining economic priorities. And everyone is getting insular. I'm very fond of saying that the new divide globally is not between the rich and the poor. It's not between the haves and have-nots. It's between the open and the closed. And by that, I mean the open-minded and the closed-minded. And everything really is flowing from there. Religious beliefs, economic beliefs, theology, everything is flowing from that, from the minds that people have. Now, specifically in India, the pre-COVID era was not encouraging. In the last few years, the economy has been declining. Job creation has not been anywhere near what it is supposed to be. I think the government has delivered only 20% of the jobs target that it set for itself. GDP growth had slowed down. Unemployment, and I'm talking still pre-COVID, unemployment was at a 10-year high. I think demonetization has not worked. Everybody knows it. GST is in concept a good thing to do. I think it's been poorly implemented. And there are several other challenges, most notably the, shall I say, lack of independence of institutions that were hitherto independent. The judiciary, for instance, the Reserve Bank of India, the executive, which is the bureaucracy. So I think there's, and like I said, my previous comments on right-wing nationalism seems to have superseded a lot of these institutions. There is a great, and we're in a bit of a peculiar situation. I don't mean this to be a political response, but typically the party in power has the right thoughts and ideas for this country, but they are very poor at execution and implementation, simply because they've not been in power for a long time. And history judges people. I mean, to give you an example, when Ronald Reagan was president of America, everybody laughed at him. They said he's a Hollywood actor. He doesn't know anything. He's a flake. And 25, 30 years later, the world looks at Reagan as perhaps the best post-World War II Republican president with his brand of Reaganomics. So, history will judge 20 years from now what is happening. Now, obviously, all this has been exacerbated by COVID. I mean, we have about, the government's official number is 80 crore poor people, 12 crore jobs have been lost. The GDP declined 24% in the first quarter. And that decline, by the way, is sourced from the formal sector, because the informal sector decline numbers would be even higher. What the government has done is taken the formal sector decline and projected it for the entire country. So in reality, the decline will be closer to 30% or so, which is why the government is now taking the imperative of opening up and so on and so forth. But I want to tell my young students, and maybe they'll invite me for a separate guest lecture, and I'd love to do that. Incidentally, I have a very close connection with Kaziranga National University. I was born in Jorhat because my parents were in the tea gardens in Assam, and I was brought up in Assam. My father worked for 50 years in Assam, and I even learnt Assamese. Today, I can only recall Hingu Ho or Nigoni, which is the lion and the mouse. I don't think I can remember anything beyond that. But yes, and of course, I've been to Kaziranga several times. So I have a personal connect with your lovely university. But to come back to it, the situation during COVID is not good. And therefore, the country is opening up. I just want to tell the students that, COVID is not the end of the world. And in the course of the panel discussion that Shaheen is moderating, things will improve. This too shall pass. The latest news seems to suggest that a vaccine could be available as early as the end of this calendar year, hopefully by the end of the financial year. And I think the challenge not only is the discovery of the vaccine that has to be established as safe for human usage, but also the challenges, Shaheen, of administering the vaccine in a country as large as ours. Because the health ministry has said that we can only administer about 200 million, that's about 20 crore vaccines a year. Now, for a population of our size, that means 6 years to administer the vaccine to everyone. But like I said, this too shall pass. This is not the first pandemic that has hit our lives. For young students like the ones who are listening in, you may think that the world is changed forever. Nothing of the sort has happened. This too shall pass. Even today, there is HIV, there is AIDS, there is Nipah, there is Ebola, there is Zika, there is MERS, there is SARS. And these viruses and sort of contagions have existed all through history. Yes, the scale of infection is across 200 countries simply because people travel so much nowadays. In the old days, people didn't travel as much, and therefore the scale of those infections was limited. But here's the thing. Does anyone seriously believe that after 6 months of exposure, only 0.5% of India's population is actually tested positive for COVID? That is simply not possible, because all of us know someone who has tested positive and hopefully recovered, which means that the extent of infection is probably as high as 20%, between maybe 10 and 20%, maybe even more. And for most of us, our natural immunity would see us in good stead. We've probably already recovered without even knowing it. So yes, please take all precautions, but for the love of God, do not panic. This too shall pass. Thank you, Shaheen. Over to you. Shaheen?
Shaheen,
Shaheen's signal is probably
I think
dropping.
signal is frozen.
Yes, Shaheen.
Yes.
Over to you.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
sorry. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Actually, sir has rightly said that this too shall pass. In the previous years, we have encountered so many viruses, and there has been a lot of ups and downs in the economy, but we have survived, and we're very sure that we would actually survive this pandemic. Of course, this is our first pandemic, the entire, all the people that are surviving currently. So yes. And then we are very hopeful that the economy would revive in the near future. So thank you so much, sir. And moving forward, Mr. Rajat, we would like to discuss on the same topic as well. Could you please give us an idea about the current economy and how it has affected the world as a whole? There are still talks of fresh lockdowns in UK and parts of Europe, and the world as a whole is reeling from the after effects of COVID. So could you please give us an idea about the situation and help us understand it better?
Well, thank you, Shaheen, for the question. And I must say that, Mr. Samar Singh's perspective was very, very broad and gave us a snapshot sense of what is happening on a very large context. I think I'll narrow it down closer to, let's say, the Indian market scene, if you permit me just to tweak your question a bit and answer it from my industry's perspective. Well, as Mr. Singh mentioned, the lockdown was such a tremendous one in the Indian context. There most on hindsight, people are saying that it was probably too extreme to just shut down an economy already tottering and teetering economy to shut it down wasn't the best way to deal with it. But the truth is that as Mr. Singh just alluded, the fact remains that even now, 6-8 months into the COVID situation globally, we're seeing several countries which peaked in terms of COVID situations. The numbers falling again is beginning to pick up. So the fact remains that no one really has got a hang of it. We are told that look, the vaccine is on its way, but as again Mr. Singh did point out that look, regardless of the vaccines that exist in the market, diseases persist. Now, to come back to your question or to the perspective that I want to share, yes, Indian industry has been badly hit. You don't have to be a genius to say that. But the fact remains that the consumer is still, I think, reasonably, strong when it comes to, and I don't mean to talk about, let's say, high-end stuff like, let's say, cars or real estate. Some industries are very, very badly hit. Your travel and tourism, I think Assam is a classic case in example where, your university, Kaziranga, I mean, those areas must be, the local economies must be pretty much shattered, as I would see and imagine in states like Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, which depend on tourism. But fundamentally, from my industry's perspective, household consumptions have not crashed. If you see the FMCG industry, whether it's the Unilever's, Colgate, Palmolive, and all that, yes, there's been a minor dip, but a dip that is bearable. Mercifully, that has not led to huge cuts in production. Quite to the contrary, production for most FMCGs is just as it was. Mercifully, it has not led to job losses in this particular industry. The overall economy, I'm sure Dr. Basu and Dr. Ramesh in their lectures to you on a routine basis must be updating you on a very regular basis. But again, coming to my industry, the industry that I come from, job losses have been minimal, productions have been strong. I sit here in Gurgaon, closer to Delhi. I work very closely with the government. On a very broad level, I do understand, I do see a lot of efforts coming from the government side to ensure that imports don't get impacted, that the movement of goods or raw materials does not get impacted. I recall the earlier months, April and May, when there was complete chaos in terms of what is permitted to be moved across the country in raw materials, which finished products are considered essentials. There were decisions being taken on an hourly basis. Yes, you can always argue that, look, we could have been better prepared. This was on the radar since January. The government should have started a contingency planning in February to ensure that, look, these services and these products have complete free logistical, ability to move around. Colleagues of mine like Sandeep, who's on the screen here, had to work more than just overtime to ensure that that production was not hit, that manpower was allowed to move across. We'd seen the complete chaos that reigned in our country for so long. So I'd just like to kind of wind up by saying that, the economy is badly hit, jobs have been pretty badly hit, but some sectors have survived, have pulled through. Like I mentioned, I stay in Gurgaon, and when I go out, I was talking to Mr. Singh before the session started. Life on the streets is almost normal. It's shockingly normal in the sense that people are around chai ka dukan and pan ka dukan and social distancing. We've never believed in it from the Indian context. Masks are like almost. So we've got used to it. We've got used to it, and as Mr. Singh so rightly said, this too shall pass. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Well, actually, we all know that recently we just finished our academic year, and almost like 450 plus students have graduated from Kaziranga University, and I'm sure there are like millions of students have graduated all over Assam, all over India, and all over the world. So, considering the situation where there are less job opportunities and students passing out, graduating, and there are definitely less opportunities. So and mostly the audience that we have here are students, and I'm sure they would be really eager to know what is the prospect of securing a job in the future. So I would like to know from Mr. Summer if he can give us an idea about the future of jobs, employment, and career to our fresh graduates.
Shaheen, thank you. That's a great question. And I'm sure it's a question that's on the minds of most, if not all, the students. First of all, stop reading negative news. That's the first one. Stop believing everything you hear and see on WhatsApp and social media. So first thing is that, because when we were your age, there was none of this social media. And while social media has done a lot of good, I think there's a lot of fake news and a lot of unnecessary negativity and toxicity on social media. So that is my first advice to you people. The second thing, as Rajat very correctly said, there are certain sectors that have been hit far more worse than certain other sectors. Lifestyle, for instance, fashion. I have clients like Aditya Birla Retail that had seen a 75% decline in the first quarter, and even today they're at about 60% negative. So yes, there are sectors like lifestyle, entertainment, movies, multiplexes, fashion businesses that have been worst hit. The second one would be automobiles. However, if you read the papers and see what's happening, automobiles have actually started recovering on the back of fears around COVID transmission and perhaps an accelerated need and demand for personal transportation. So if you look at August this year was similar to August last year, in fact, a marginal 3 or 4% growth. And September this year for the automobile industry is actually a 15-20% growth over September last year. So automobiles, at least initially, seem to have recovered quicker than people had thought. Then if you look at FMCG, and both Rajat and I come from FMCG backgrounds, especially food and beverage industries have done exceedingly well. Clients of mine like Britannia and, shall I say, Nestle, Pepsi, Coke, even a company like Cadbury's, Mondelez, which largely sells indulgence products, confectionery products, has seen a 3 or 4% growth. So food and beverage companies have actually done better than if there were not a COVID situation, largely on account of pantry stocking. For instance, there is some research that seems to indicate that the average urban household has bought 1.1 kilograms per month of biscuits extra. Processed foods, Maggi noodles, chips, soft drinks, water, anything that is processed, because let's face it, there's a lot of the idli vada sambar places have been shut. So that has sort of converted demand to what people would think are safe products to buy. So processed foods have seen a boom. By and large, FMCG, then the second category that is, or industry that has seen significant growth is personal care, especially in terms of sanitation and hygiene products, personal protective products, disinfectants, soaps, shampoos, etc., that have some sort of a hygiene sort of selling story. Immunity building products, companies like Dabur, Himalaya, healthcare companies have done quite well. If there is a healthcare company that also has foods as their portfolio, depending on how well they've been able to focus, different parts of the industry or organization have grown differently. Himalaya, for instance, which is another client of mine, has done reasonably well on their healthcare portfolio. Dabur has a foods portfolio as well as a healthcare portfolio. Obviously, their energies have been separate or dissipated between trying to push both agendas, but they've also seen growth. Digital. I think the entire digitization of our economy has gathered pace like never before. Personally, for someone like me, old school, I would, go to a bank. I haven't been to a bank the entire year, and I think that habit will persist with me. Now, the youngsters on the call will say, boss, this is very normal. We never went to the bank in the first place. So yes, but older consumers like me, I think we've changed to net banking, and I see that probably persisting even after COVID is gone. We are a lot of our people, a lot of purchases are now happening on digital sort of platforms, including fruits and vegetables. People like Big Basket, Grofers, uh, a lot of the fruits and vegetable delivery platforms have seen an uptick. And as Rajat was referring, a lot of food and beverage restaurants and pubs and bars were shut, but many of them in the last 2 months have started home delivery, including the one that were not doing home delivery earlier on. And today, at least in larger urban affluent markets, practically every restaurant is doing home delivery. They also have a takeaway option. You can go drive in and take their food away. Chemists, which literally didn't shut down at all, they are doing order booking, they are doing home delivery. And I must say, from a personal point of view, I think the Kirana stores have really acquitted themselves very, very honorably in this entire COVID lockdown, because modern trade, especially large air conditioned stores, and I have retail experience. I used to work for Spencer's for 4 years. Modern trade stores have been shut for some period of time, but the Kirana stores have done home deliveries, they've done credit payments, they will send you WhatsApp messages, booking. So, Indians are resilient people, Shaheen. The Indian ecosystem, which is a mix of capitalism and socialism and some sort of caution, has really, done reasonably well. Our social fabric, by and large, has held. If you were not to believe the media, I mean, by and large, the question to ask is how much is my own individual life been impacted? And it has been impacted to an extent, but to what extent? You've been told to wear masks and stay at home. Your grandparents and great-grandparents died in war. The First World War, we lost 22 million people. In the Spanish flu in 1918 to 20, we lost 20 million people. In the Second World War, we lost 60 million people. The last 100 years or so, or last 80 years or so, have actually been the safest and most peaceful in the entire history of the world. So I think the sector that I mentioned are continuing to hold promise. But I want to say something, and I don't know whether, Shaheen, you're going to come to it a little later. Maybe you will, in terms of reskilling. So if you have a question on reskilling, I will talk about it later. Otherwise, I would suggest all of you, are educated, and I mean no disrespect to the educationists who are on the call, respected people like Dr. Ramesh, Dr. Basu, Dr. Bishwajit. Our educational system needs to change. And Shaheen, someone like you who has studied in Germany, I mean, I recently moderated in January, and the Prime Minister has come out with a new national education policy, which is a definite step forward, but much more needs to be done by individual institutions, because we are still preparing graduates and postgraduates for relevance of 25 years ago. I mean, I moderated a discussion on, I was invited by the Ministry of Education in Sharjah and Dubai, where I was there in January earlier this year for about a week, where I moderated lots of panel discussions and interacted with close to 20,000 educationists, and about 100,000 students came over that 1 week to the convention center in Sharjah. Shaheen, we had people from China. They have 2,000 schools driven purely by artificial intelligence and remote distance learning, even before COVID. And they are putting up 200 schools every month, driven purely by artificial intelligence and machine learning. So, the new fields are all about sustainable energy. I think Rajat mentioned it, clean energy, and you're a fluid dynamics sort of professor. Sustainability, clean energy, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. Formal education system students may not necessarily prepare you for this, But please be self-reliant. That's the theme of this. Please step out of your comfort zone and start taking courses and equipping yourself with these new skills. Because, and also, I don't want to sound alarmist, but forget about 35, 40-year careers. You will not have that luxury. You will start getting laid off in your 40s. It is already happening unless you reskill and retool yourself. So we can probably continue this with the rest of the questions and during Q&A. But that's my answer to your question, Shaheen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, that's true. Actually, considering the current situation where we have so much obstacles, but at the same time, we have new opportunities being created. And the most important thing for us, for the young generation and the fresh graduates, is that we need to have a leap of faith, and we need to believe in ourselves that yes, so what, we have so much obstacles, we will be able to overcome, and then we have new opportunities, and we can discover and create new opportunities and then venture into those. So like Sir has said about being self-reliant, and since Mr. Rajat is from the Amway background, and which teach people to be self-reliant, self-independent and build resilience. So what are the skills that would be required for students to venture into such dimension?
Do you specifically mean into an industry like direct selling or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. For starters, direct selling is something that is being taught in some Indian universities as well. There's one thing in Himachal Pradesh. We did see reference from time to time that Delhi University management books have some passing reference. So the truth is, yeah, it's something like that people are not taking have not taken seriously as of now. And I did see the reaction. Mr. Singh was quite pleasantly surprised when he learned the numbers, just sheer numbers, 6 million odd people in this industry. Well, to answer your specific question, and again, I'll just go back to something that Mr. Singh mentioned just a few moments ago, that the wellness industry, or the industry that has products that help and build immunity are seeing a resurgence of sorts. So what does a youth of today need to get a break in any direct selling opportunity that may be around in his or her neighborhood, etc.? Well, like I did mention, this is a disruptive market force, and disruptive market forces are not welcome with open arms. So I think the first thing one has to level with themselves and understand that, look, what you're getting into is not going to be a cakewalk, regardless of what others might tell you. Because one criticism leveled against our industry is that a lot of the people who are already into the business maybe dream selling the opportunities of success. I think you all intelligent people, that, look, success does not come easy. Success comes with a lot of hard work. So first step, like in any line, please be ready for a lot of hard work, number one. Number two, like in any line that you want success, whether you were trying to get into an engineering college or a management, an MBA seat in any college, or maybe Kaziranga University as well, was you had to set yourself goals. The second would be, I would say, is that to have very strong milestones by which time you want to achieve what. This industry offers, like I said, about 55% of the industry is from the wellness category. And today, across the country, I travel a lot. I travel to most state capitals within the country, interact with not just regulators, not just with FICCI and others industry associations, but people in general as well. I see a complete slew of gyms that have opened up all across the country, regardless the size and of a town and the shape of a particular town. So this is an industry that, and even on digital platform, whether it's not just WhatsApp, but Instagram and all that, youngsters who are doing incredible stuff in terms of physical challenging themselves, depend very heavily on supplements and things like that. So that's the third area that I would say that opens up for youth, especially because those of you who are passionate about let's say fitness would fit into selling health supplements very well, because obviously it's something that you will try out, see the benefits, and then talk to others to see how it benefits them. That's the third. And the fourth, I think, the truth is that this is a sales job, and I'm sure Mr. Singh would agree that, look, a sales job demands you to be a little thick-skinned. You will speak to 10 people, you try to knock 10 doors, 6 doors will shut on your face. Do you have the personality, the character to take that no in your face? Because I think most of us come, like I said, most of us come from very protected backgrounds, nice families, etc., good societies, etc. So to be told no on your face is not easy. So the fourth point I would encourage youth, youngsters on this particular call is to harden yourself. Look, guys, job markets are drying up, and as Mr. Singh pointed out, please forget that that 30-40-year-old window of seeing, chalo, I'll start out here and then become senior manager, then I'll become a vice president, then senior vice president. That era is gone. If you look at the West, you're talking about gig economies. What is a gig economy? People don't take jobs anymore. They just take projects. A company or an entrepreneur or an employer will just engage X number of people with skills 1, 2, 3 for a project. The project is over, the contract is over. If that's happening in the US now, another 2-3 years time, believe me, it's going to hit the Indian market. So for you youth out there, he's absolutely right. Mr. Singh is absolutely right. Just puncture that dream of getting a good job and seeing yourself through. Some of you will get that, maybe in public sector or not, but it'll be what, 5%, 10% of you. 90% of you are going to enter the market looking for a job, and those jobs are not available because as Mr. Singh and speakers and Dr. Ramesh have pointed out, our education system is outdated, man. I mean, it's something that was for the marketplace 30 years ago, and we haven't adapted. So you and I start at a great disadvantage in that context. But you can flip it around, make it your strength. Be very real that, look, when I finish this course, my chance of my getting a job is not terribly high. What do I do? Do I get frustrated? And no, you can't afford to get frustrated, because the world has moved on. The world has moved on from a lot of protest driven. It is market driven. That's the truth. So that's the fourth point I'll encourage youth to youngsters who are looking at this particular industry. Be ready for a few knocks. It's not going to be easy. As I did point out, 85%, if 85% businesses fail in the world, I think it's only right to assume that close to 85% people who attempt self-employment, micro entrepreneurship in an industry like direct selling will find it difficult. So be that 15%. Be determined to be that 15%, because there is no letter of employment. I'm sorry. That's the truth. I'm 52 and, and I count my blessings. I thank my lucky stars that when the COVID lockdown happened, I didn't get a pink slip, I still pray to God that I don't get that, because I've got 3 kids to raise, But the truth is, it's a tough world. It's getting tougher. We work very closely with organizations like the All India Traders Association, which have 5 crore mom and pop stores, shops all across the country as their members. They are facing such an incredible challenge from e-commerce players like Amazon, etc. But what do you do? What can they do? They can maybe go and shake the government, because this government is said to be the ones that look after, that come um, um, from the trader background. But even they're facing a very difficult situation. So these are the 3-4 things I'd like to share with students of Kaziranga University. Sure, give it a shot. There's nothing wrong with it. I remember, I did mention some time back about the FICCI event we had in Guwahati, and the lady from Avon sharing that she had 50,000 women working under her in the various states in Northeast. Cosmetics industry does require a lot of young hands and feet to explain to the other generation, the older generations, what new particular products are. So for young ladies, I think direct selling is reasonably attractive as well, because again, this is something that globally people have seen forever. Whenever there are any kinds of recessions in the economy, like 2008 was the last one before this, the one industry that does not show any dip in sales is cosmetics. So there are opportunities. All companies that are into health and wellness have immunity-based products. Today, the consumer is far more willing to try out, prevention, rather than wait for COVID to strike and then go to hospital, or her to go to hospital. He or she is willing to try out lifestyle changes, dietary changes right now. So I think it's a good opportunity. As an industry, we have seen quite a surge in interest of people coming in. So clearly there is scope. And as one of my earlier slides indicated, that look, India, with such a large middle class and urban population, we as an industry, we have barely scratched the surface. So I think there's plenty of scope, but just keep those 4-5 things in the back of your mind when you get into it. I hope I've answered your question, Shine.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm very sure that our students have got an idea about entrepreneurship and how it would help them to be self-independent. Sorry that I cannot turn on my video now because we have network issues in the university currently. So we would like to wrap up this situation, and the last question would be for Mr. Summer. So, Mr. Summer, could you please explain to us how technology would affect our lives, and how there has been changes pre and post-COVID area, and now we see that we are more dependent on technology, and how, like, even after COVID ends, so how it is going to continue?
Okay, Shaheen, thank you. That's a very interesting question, and no discussion on education with the future of our country, who are the panelists listening on this call, as Rajat very clearly said. You people are the future of this country, and technology will disrupt your lives far more than it disrupted our lives. Before I respond, Shaheen, my two favorite sayings on technology are as follows. Number one, technology by itself, it serves no purpose. If it, technology is a means to an end, it's not an end by itself. So students, please remember that. If it doesn't serve a purpose, if it doesn't solve a human pain problem, either real or perceived, it is of no use. That's number one. Number two, more importantly, people typically tend to overestimate the short-term impact of technology and underestimate the long-term impact of technology. They overestimate the short term, underestimate the long term. I mean, if you look at law today, IBM's Watson will be a better lawyer, their artificial intelligence program, than 90% of the lawyers in this country, in the world actually. And the way it is improving on a virtuous cycle every minute, every second, if you're getting into a law program today, by the time you finish your law in 3 or 5 years, depending on where you're studying, IBM's Watson would be a better lawyer than you. So you'll be useless. If you're studying radiology today, the best radiology programs in the world are already superior to, or at least equal to, or superior to the best radiologists in the world. They can detect tumors and cancers at a better rate than the best radiologists in the world. How would you react if I told you that the aviation industry is doing research to find if they reduce the number of pilots from 2 to 1, then they will save $15 billion annually worldwide. Even more scarily, Shaheen, they are doing research to see if they were to remove pilots altogether, how much money will they save? $35 billion. Now, here's the thing. Let's look at that. When you sit in a plane, you rarely see the pilot. In domestic flights, the doors to the cabin are sometimes open when you come in, so you may see the pilot. But if the door is shut, how do you know whether there is a pilot at all? When you travel in a train, you can't see the engine driver. You don't know whether there's anyone manning it. Similarly, in a bus, if you're sitting at the back end, you generally think that there is someone driving it, but how do you know for sure until you actually physically see it? And the reality is that planes take off, fly, and land completely by computer today, what's called fly-by-wire. And in fact, pilots need ATC permission to manually override the controls that the computer is running. And for all of you who want to see a great example of the skill of a pilot, see a movie called Sully, where Tom Hanks has played Captain Chesley Sullenberger, who landed, or when it actually happened, Rajat will remember, Life magazine covered it as the miracle on the Hudson, but that's a separate matter, but today they're already flying by wire. However, the psychological impact of having a pilot there, a man that you can touch and feel and see, is something that, to my mind, technology cannot replace. Let's assume that one of your loved ones were going in for an operation and you were relying on a radiology report generated by an artificial intelligence or machine learning system. You would still require the validation of a human radiologist to tell you that this is my recommendation. So there are certain limitations to technological application where you require a human interface. Today, the advances in technology and medical science are astounding. If you haven't read about it, students, read about something called nanobites or nanoparticles. Today, they can go inside your, or nanobots can go inside your body and remove blockages in arteries and kidneys. They can fight a particular disease without affecting the rest of it. They say that chemotherapy kills more people than cancer does. And in many ways, it is true. Today you have things like quantum computing and quantum physics and, or bioorganic sort of, if you see the movie Avatar, and Avatar 2 and 3 are hopefully going to be released either later this year or maybe next year, that neural networks are today all possible. You remember a movie called Minority Report where Tom Cruise was flipping one screen to another 5 years before it happened and people were shocked, but it happened. Today it happens on your phone. You flip a screen without even thinking about it. Most Hollywood films show technology that theoretically is possible. They work with companies like Industrial Light and Magic. They work with MIT and Harvard and Stanford researchers, and those technologies are actually piloted and shown in cinema today. So, it's driverless cars. Who would have thought that driverless cars, Google's driverless cars, would perhaps potentially one day replace driver-driven cars? And you have to look at it very differently, Shaheen. These are basically computers. A driverless car is a computer on wheels. An aeroplane is a computer in the air. Today, I worked with Vijay Mallya some 5-6 years ago in London. He demonstrated to me on his mobile phone, sitting in his office, he could control the temperature in his house. He could switch the music on in different rooms. He could switch his geyser on so that hot water is available. He could open his gate by remote. These things may sound very simple now, but I'm talking about 5 or 6 years ago. What about technology in terms of enemy counter? Recently the US took out Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi of the ISIS by doing nothing, by sitting some 10,000 miles away at the other end of the world and pressing a few buttons, and a satellite or a drone fires a missile. So, technology also, which brings me to this important point, students, that technology can be used for both good and bad. What is Jurassic Park? It's taking dinosaur DNA and regenerating them for today's world. By the way, there was a line from Jurassic Park that in the original that Richard and Rajat would remember. You kids were too young, and I hope you've seen them, because it's a metaphor for life and the price that humans can pay for messing with nature. Richard Attenborough says a line that life will find a way. Life always finds a way. And keep that in the back of your mind when you're talking about today's COVID. So technology, A, will replace human beings on lower skilled, repetitive tasks that typically do not require too much emotional intelligence. But who knows? Even that may start happening. And I don't want to sound alarmist to the professors here today, but imagine all of us, all the professors could be replaced by a single robot that teaches every subject. And here's the thing, the robot learns every time. If a student asks a question from the robot that the robot does not know, the algorithm kicks in and that then becomes knowledge. And that robot doesn't want toilet breaks, doesn't want smoking breaks, doesn't want a lunch break, and can teach 20 subjects. Now, in China, it has already started happening. Now, you're going to say that with 1.4 billion people in this country, where will the jobs be? Well, here's exactly what Rajat was saying. We need to reskill, we need to retool, we need to develop our soft skills. A lot of you are engineers. Remember one thing, and I'm sure Rajat will agree. I worked for 32 years. I'm 3 years older than Rajat. I'm 55 and a half. I'll be 56 in January. If life has taught me one thing, it is that 80% of your success is because of your people skills, and only 20% is because of technical skills. At the end of the day, that technology still needs some human being to think about whether it should be deployed or not. That technology still needs some sort of thinking. So it'll be interesting to see the kind of responses you get. Maybe one day robots will evolve enough to have romantic feelings, etc. By the way, I would recommend all of you read a book written by a friend of mine. In fact, I just met him yesterday. He works out in the gym with me. An Indian gentleman called Atul Jalan. He's a full-time futurist, and he's written a book called Where Will Man Take Us? Where Will Man Take Us by Atul Jalan. It is available on Amazon. It is an incredible book that will open your eyes to the way technology is disrupting everything. And a great example of the future is how technology has been used in sports. Look at the game of cricket. Technology has enhanced cricket. You know, whether it is the ball tracking, the hotspot, the snickometer, front foot footfall. You can see that the usage of technology has added to the drama and the experience and the immersion of watching cricket. Or let's say, Rajat, I'm guessing, grew up playing football. Every self-respecting Bengali and Sandeep Da will obviously all play football. Look at VARs, or the goal line technology in football, or the service challenge in tennis. So technology can be used to enhance the experience of the human being and the consumer. I mean, see the way Amway has deployed technology today. So Shaheen, it is a little scary, but my message to the students is there's certain thing that technology, at least to my mind, will never replace. But you have to cast aside your older skills and your older ways of doing business and thinking and venture into the unknown. Rajat mentioned it 5 minutes ago. Look at the game of cricket, the way T20 has evolved. Death bowling, Yorkers, reverse swing, scramble seam, if you're a cricket fan, pinch hitting, reverse switch hits, scoops, etc. I mean, those you will not typically see. And that has added to the overall game of cricket. They've had to develop new skills, learn new skills, and remain relevant to your employers or to what your consumers and your customers every single day. That's my answer.
Thank you so much, sir. What an enlightening session this has been. It has been, I think, our students have definitely benefited from this panel discussion that we have just had. So we would like to wrap up this session, and moving forward, we are having a question and answer session with our students. So one of our students from BTech 7th semester, he has posted a question, so which I would like to read for you. So he's confused between entrepreneurship and a full-time job. With the economy slowing down due to COVID, how safe is entrepreneurship as compared to a regular full-time job?
Who would he like to answer the question? I think maybe Rajat can take that, but Rajat already said.
Yes.
So let me say one thing: neither of them are safe. As Rajat mentioned, you can get laid off tomorrow. I know people. Listen, Zomato has laid off 30% of their workforce, right? Oyo has sacked thousands in America, China, and India. Larsen and Toubro. Today, I've received news yesterday that Thermax is laying off everyone above the age of 40. Rajat, I don't know whether you read that or not. Coca-Cola is laying off 200 people in India. So there is no safety whether you're in a job or an entrepreneur. So that's the operating premise. So if you're if you're going to use the word safe, then both Rajat and I have failed in what we said to you. There is no safety anymore. The entire theme of this is to be self-reliant, Atmanirbhar. Whoever has asked that question, the government is going to do nothing for you. Burn those words into your brain.
Yeah.
Right? Burn it into your brain. Nobody is going to do anything for you. Your father cannot do anything for you. Your mother cannot do anything for you. And therefore, when you get married and have children, you remember you will not be able to do anything for them. All you can do is give them the best education that your money can buy and the strongest sense of values that you can do. So neither of them are safe. But I'll let Rajat answer it, because this gentleman wants to know what is safe, entrepreneurship or working. And I think Rajat said it, because it really depends on the kind of person you are. Rajat, over to you.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add to what Mr. Singh has shared, because, like he's pointing out, the jobs that are going, they're vanishing. B, 85% businesses don't survive. So it's a tough world, So I think my reply will be a combination of all we've spoken over the last about 60 minutes or plus. Be as informed as Mr. Singh. You must be as informed as he is. He's tapped into every little element of the world, whether it's technology, whether it's medicine, whether it's sport. Be very well informed. Upgrade your skills from time to time. And be ready to take knocks. I think it's a combination of all this, I'll just echo what he said in his presentation all through. It's a tough world. It's getting tougher. Government is not going to give you that government job. Those are also going. Even government jobs that exist in the country today, there's no pension in them. The world is getting tougher and tougher. But yes, yet at the same time, there is, for instance, nowadays on the net, you get the Lokadong turmeric that a company called Zizira is selling. Now, these are all a perfect marriage of, let's say, traditional knowledge, which is deep in a particular region or a state, marrying a technology and reaching out to the marketplace that requires this. Because, 20 years back, I would have struggled to find organic stuff anywhere, in any shop. Today, again, since the algorithms figure out that someone like Rajat Banerjee, age 52, likes to buy organic stuff, move to put anything on, bing bang. I mean, I'm getting hit by so much stuff. So like Mr. Singh is suggesting, don't concentrate so much on the negatives, because it's going to pull you down, right? If you just keep saying, no jobs, no markets, no this, no that, I mean, life becomes difficult to even think what the hell one should do in life. So look at the positives. Try to figure out, how tradition can marry technology to provide a service or a product that the world needs. Again, I think from Northeast, there's this chili called Bhoot Jolokia or Bhoot Jolokia. I'm sorry, I forget the exact name. No,
yes.
It's just a pepper. It's a chili.
Ghost chili, yes, sir.
Ghost chili that's grown in.
Bhoot Jolokia.
But look at the global demand for it. I mean,
exactly.
I remember reading a few years back how the companies in the West that make tear gas and all were buying up stuff like that. So it's not that, look, the world's kind of turning upside down. It is the rotation the axis may be changing. So there are opportunities. Be informed. Be better informed than Mr. Singh, because that's only then will he be a successful, speaker. If his example percolates into you all and you get better informed than him, better skilled than people like and opportunists to survive. I'm sure your professors, Dr. Basu and Dr. Ramesh, must be sharing all that knowledge with you, because it's an interesting world. It's a tough world. I mean, you have to make it simple. As Mr. Singh pointed out from the film, life will find a way. So you will find a way. There's no magic bullet that a Rajat Banerjee or a Anil Jyoti Basu is going to give it to you. No way, buddy. You have to figure out. The knowledge is there. Use it. Use your, stand up on your feet. Come out of your comfort zone. I think in the Indian context, if there is a disadvantage that we have is, like I think I've said this at least 4 times today. We are very protected. We are protected by society, by families. It's very good. It's a strength, but it also makes us a little soft. So step out of your comfort zone. Be informed. Upskill yourself. Upgrade yourself. Forget the job market. I mean, you'll be very lucky to get a job. Entrepreneurship is going to be difficult. Be ready to take a few knocks. Read up a lot. As Mr. Singh has just helped us, with a couple of names. Read up a lot, listen up a lot, learn a lot, and get ready, boss. Life is tough. It's not easy. So on that happy note, I'll hand it back to Shaheen.
Thank you very much. So, well, actually, this is very truly said that the government, this is the ugly truth, that the government is not going to do anything for us. We will not be given like direct job opportunities. Of course, there will be, but it'll be less. So the ultimate step, the only step that we have is we need to work on our own. We need to channelize and create our own paths. So anyways, moving forward, since we are already going behind schedule, we'll be only able to take just one question more. So this is a question from a final year BTech student. So we all have the notion that in order to start a business, it's very important for us to have a background from management. We need to have an MBA. So is it very essential? Is it very necessary for a person who wants to venture into business to have an MBA degree, or he can also proceed with the skill sets? One of our students from 7th Sem would like to know that.
Shaheen,
yes, sir.
I've actually already answered that. I've typed while you were talking. I've typed 2 answers for students so that they could get it. But I think Rajat wants to say something. I would like to say something, but Rajat, please, you go ahead first.
Yeah, sorry, Samar. I'll just take a second. I want to ask the person who asked this question that what degree did, let's say, Dhirubhai Ambani have? Over to you, Samar. Over to you.
Sorry, Rajat just stole my thunder. That's exactly what I was going to say. But these people may not remember Dhirubhai Ambani. I'm assuming all of you know Mark Zuckerberg, or as the Jews call him, Zuckerberg. That's the correct Jewish pronunciation, by the way. And I realized that when I saw Sacha Baron Cohen, who is an English Jew actor, who plays Borat and The Great Dictator, hysterical movies, and he was pronouncing it as Zuckerberg, and I realized that's the Jewish pronunciation. Mark Zuckerberg is a dropout from Harvard. Bill Gates is a dropout. Dhirubhai Ambani was a dropout. Sachin Tendulkar studied till class 10. Virat Kohli has studied till class 12. There are the history. So let me put it this way. If you finish your engineering and MBA, you will likely end up working for people who never did engineering or MBA.
Yeah.
Right? It's people in suits who work for people who wear jeans and hoodies. So let me put it that way. But jokes aside, whoever asked that question, when I start my leadership talks, I start with a story about my own time when I finished my MBA, which was in 1989, before all the students were perhaps not even born. Maybe your parents were not even married, and therefore you were not even a figment in their eyes, a figment of imagination in their eyes. But I finished my MBA in 1989, and my dad was a tea planter who started working at the age of 17 and a half in 1957. He celebrated his 18th birthday in tea, and he worked in tea for 50 years. And he saw 3 generations, and he was the 3rd Indian to join tea. All his friends were English and Canadians and Scotsmen and Irishmen. And when I finished my MBA in 1989, he had already been working for 32 years. And I called him and I said, congratulations, your son has become an MBA. And he said to me, don't worry, you can succeed despite that. So that was a rude shock for me. He said, don't worry, you can succeed despite being an MBA. And then when he said, what will you learn of 2 years of management in 2 years that has taken me then 32 years and later on 50 years to learn? So here's the thing, and you may not like what I'm going to say, and I agree with Rajat. I think that we all as a next generation, including our children, need to toughen up. Pardon my saying so, and I'm beginning to sound more and more like my father. But the younger generation today is extremely entitled and privileged. I say that to my daughter all the time. If you were foreigners, you would have been kicked out of your houses when you were 18 years old. You would have had to work to pay your way through college, and certainly MBA is something in a decent Ivy League or even non-Ivy League institute would cost you about $50,000 a year. So you would have to take loans. By the way, student loan in the United States is $1.2 trillion. And it's a crippling debt. So your parents will kick you out at 18. And after that, you go and work at a gas station or work at a McDonald's. Famous Hollywood stars have started their careers and lives like that, because higher education is so expensive that very few people can afford it. So you're very fortunate, very blessed. You're studying in a great institute. Your biggest challenge is that you have poor Wi-Fi. 100 years ago, the challenge would be that you'd be drafted to war and killed in war on the second day of battle. So look at it that perspective. If you're dumb, pardon my saying so, and you come into the MBA program, you will leave a little less dumb. If you're bright, you come into the MBA program, you will leave a little more bright. It is not just what your brilliant teachers and professors have put up for you, students. It is the time spent in thought and reflection and debate and discussion, talking to your colleagues, sharing life experiences, which at the moment are compromised because you're working remotely. I think classes are still remote. But like I said, a month, 2 months, eventually you will land up at the campus. The time that you spent interacting with each other is what grows you as a human being. So your engineering degree is neither a qualification nor a disqualification. And remember, I'm beginning to sound more and more like our Prime Minister, where I'm giving pravachan and bhashan, etc. But there is a difference between being qualified and being educated. When you leave from this institute, you will be qualified. Education takes a lifetime. An illiterate village panchayat head who has received no formal education but has seen births, deaths, floods, famines, elections, earthquakes is probably wise and educated. He may not necessarily be qualified. So you are not necessarily educated. You will be qualified. Education takes a lifetime. That's number one. Number two distinction I want to make to all you students: there's a difference between intelligence and wisdom. An Infosys engineer writing code could be intelligent. He may not be wise. The village headman that I just gave the example of may not be intelligent, but he's wise. So difference between being qualified and educated, difference between intelligence and wisdom. Sorry for a long answer, but I feel passionate about these causes, and therefore thank you, Shaheen, for the opportunity. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Well, I mean, this session has been so interesting, and I'm sure all our students have really found it very interesting and informative. So at last, we would like to move to the last session, which is the vote of thanks, which would be delivered by Dr. Analjyoti Basu. He is the Assistant Professor, School of Business. Sir, please.
Okay, thank you all of you. Thank you for the enlightening sessions. Well, as already Shaheen has said, that I am Dr. Analjyoti Basu, and my designation here is Assistant Professor of Entrepreneurship, School of Business. Well, that is not that is the first designation. Apart from that, I am having a couple of designations. That I am also the mentor of Entrepreneurship Club of Kaziranga University. I am also the member of Institute Innovation Council. And apart from that, if you go for my background, I have done my doctorate from Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India, Ahmedabad, Gujarat. That is the premier institute of India in terms of entrepreneurship. On behalf of the convener, I place my heartfelt thanks to all the dear dignitaries. First of all, I place my heartfelt thanks to Professor Dr. P.G. Ramesh. He is the Dean of School of Engineering and Technology and Center for Excellence, Kaziranga University, for his enlightened inaugural speeches. And very well placed by him, very well spelled by him, the 3 C's. We always say that what is 3 C's, 3 C's, but very well said by him. That is creative skills and ability, collaborative skills, and after all, the courage should be inculcated in it to get the output. Very well said, sir. And our special thanks to Mr. Rajat Banerjee, National Head Corporate Affairs of Amway India, for presenting his experience and knowledge session on government's role in the growth of entrepreneurship in India. We came to know different aspects from his lecture. What are they? For students, types of business model in entrepreneurship, how entrepreneurship is important in Indian society, social responsibility of entrepreneurship, a focus on Indian market, and overall view of direct selling. Yes, we have a lot of students from BBA, MBA. So can you recall it? And it is very important for you to inculcate all this thing in your studies from now. Very good insight, sir. Finally, we are also thankful. We are very much thankful to Dr. Singh, Dr. Shekhawat, the great speaker and business consultant leader who runs PNL functions, and for the MBA and BBA students from what is the intake for them. Can you recall that he has taken very good issues from Indian economy in the pre-COVID and post-COVID era, the race to gain global power, how the global bigwigs are racing it to get the global baton, bringing vaccine and administering it, how to do it, future of jobs and employment, future of education, and the technology in the coming years. So he has rounded up the total things. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Samar Singh Shekhawat, sir. Finally, before we conclude, one thing I want to say, this is from research to all my students. Why it is made for you? Can anybody just spell it out why this type of session is for you? Well, because already the time is running out, I want to say something. Just take the example of growing fruits. How the fruits could be grown? Already the existing tree is there, right? And you could give more pesticides, water it, and it could grow more fruits. Another way is you could sow more seeds. The seeds will come up into the plants. The plants, when it will grow more fruits. So which one is the saturated part? Don't you think the first part is the saturated part? That will go into saturation. The existing trees, they have a saturation point. But the second part, that is not having saturation. You can grow as much as tree as you want. Fine. You can plant as much as plants as you want. And when they will grow, they will give fruits. And this is the point for you, my dear students. This is the point for you. You come up with new ideas. You come up with new ventures. Fine. And the present, you build up your capacity, build up the capacity of your enterprises. You are the budding entrepreneurs. Yes, it will mainly come up from the students, and here no point of saturation is there. The existing entrepreneurship, only one thing we can do from it, we can help them to help them for the capacity building, but you can grow the enterprises. After that, when the saturation point will come, at that time many person will be employed in our country. When your saturation point will come, from the point of growth to the point of saturation, you can employ a big part. So that's all. So please encourage student entrepreneurship from your side. So please encourage the mission of entrepreneurship, and also please encourage the vision of employment. Thank you to all. But before leaving, I want to say to Professor Samar Banerjee, Samar Singh Shekhawat and Rajat Banerjee, can we have some collaborative programs in our campus, so that we can get more budding entrepreneurs? I am trying my best. That is on the views of an academician, but you are the field members. Can we do in the coming years? Rajat sir, your mic is muted.
You're on mute, Rajat.
It's a good suggestion. My able colleague in the East, Sandeep Mukherjee, I'm sure he'll be able to connect all and take it forward.
Definitely, we will be in touch, sir. And sir, Samar Singh Shekhawat, sir.
Yeah, Doctor, thank you. Dr. Basu, you promoted me to doctor and professor during the course of this conversation. I think you're so
Actually, I didn't get your designation.
No, you're so, my designation is just,
Mr.
Average Indian human being. I have a lot of respect for doctors and professors like you. I claim no such literary heritage, but thank you so much. What I can do in my personal capacity is, I know Dr. Ramakrishnan Raman very well. He is the Dean of Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, where I studied. They have a separate institute, which is they have actually a separate MBA program around innovation and entrepreneurship, which is very interesting. The proper specialization, MBA, innovation, entrepreneurship, and they have a separate university, separate college for that. He's a good friend of mine. I'm on their advisory council. I'm ex-Symbiosis myself. I do a lot of lectures and a lot of things. Recently, Saurav Ganguly and I were on a panel discussion. Some of you may have seen that. And I can ask, he'll be happy to take a call from you, and you can get best practices and learning. I think it's appropriate for you to perhaps start with more industry interface, so that we start giving, that's a low cost initiative to start with. All you need to do is invite, and today it's a zero cost initiative, because you don't even need to provide air tickets and travel to Jorhat. Right now you can do it on Zoom, maybe once a month or once a quarter or whatever you want to. Add industry experts coming in and speaking, and maybe you should see, the reality, Dr. Basu, is that when Rajat and I were starting our careers, the most aspirational companies were companies like Hindustan Lever, which I was privileged to have worked with, although not immediately, but a little later in my career. Hindustan Lever, Procter and Gamble, Nestle, Cadbury's, those were the highly aspirational companies. For today's generation, those are not aspirational companies at all. Exactly. For them today, the aspirational companies are Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and even places like the big Oyos and Ubers and Olas and big baskets of the world. So I have friends and colleagues there as well. I can request, they'll be happy to come in and share knowledge. I think so. As a first step, I think industry interface, increase that a lot. Maybe every month you should have someone from industry coming in and speaking, because that adds a lot of value. Also, I think it's a good break for the students, because they are staring at their laptop screens from morning till evening, especially until campus actually opens. So, and it will be a lot of value addition. That is one. Secondly, I will connect you with Dr. Raman, and he'll be happy to share best practices. And also, I would like to tell the students themselves, you have to take, because the entire theme, and Rajat has stressed upon it, Dr. Ramesh stressed it. Dr. Ramesh's speech, Dr. Ramesh, I have to compliment you. It was an excellent talk. I know I made some points and noted, your B's and C's, that you mentioned in your speech. However, your students would be interested only in getting A's. So maybe you should have some messaging from A as well. And my suggestion is A is Atmanirbhar. The president himself, Prime Minister himself says Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. So become self-reliant truly, boss. They say the best place to find a helping hand is at the end of your own arm. If someone does something for you, great. But don't expect anyone to do anything. Develop that entrepreneurial mind space, Be comfortable in what's called a VUCA environment: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. When I was with UB at Heineken, we were a Heineken joint venture. We used to do things like, one of the most successful consumer programs overseas was something called, I forgot, it's called Dropped. Because they'll take you, suppose they take Sandeep Mukherjee, and they drop him in the middle of a country that he's never been to in his life, and he has no idea where he is. And he has to now make his way. He has to survive off the land. Of course, they'll get you you'll have some basic food and water and stuff like that. No passport, no ticket, no money, nothing. Now, how many of you have been in a situation like that? In fact, after this call, I would suggest that you pause and reflect and think of a time that you've truly been in a crisis. What kind of resilience have you displayed? I'll tell you something happened that 1 week ago. I'm very fond of sunning myself in the sun because I'm blessed to live on the ground floor. And during the time when the gym was shut, I was running on the road in my parking lot basement, which is also underground. And therefore I would, sort of oil my body and put myself in the sun to get my vitamin D every day. And I'm sitting, I'm lying down on the ground on my lawn in only my pair of shorts. I close my eyes and I hear a sound. I open up and there is a snake on the ground right next to me. What will you do? The plot outside opposite our house is an open jungle plot, so it must have come from there. But what are you going to do? Now, I've grown up in the tea gardens in Assam, and we were used to animals, and Rajat will tell you, snakes and stuff everywhere. But what would you do? Snakes get set off by vibration, right? So the first thing you do is don't move at all. But can you fight your panic? The same thing is in scuba diving. I don't know whether people have been scuba diving, but if you go scuba diving for the first, and Rajat here is a marathoner and ultra marathon. In fact, I would suggest you connect with Rajat on LinkedIn and ask him. The students should have done research on the speakers. Some of your questions should be around Rajat. I'm a runner as well, but I'm not a marathoner and ultra marathoner. I run in a month about 150 kilometers. Rajat is probably training to run that in one go. But how about you asking Rajat what are the lessons that his running have taught that he has applied in life and in the corporate world? I mean, that's an interesting question to ask. So pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. When you're scuba diving, you can do all the training in the world in that tank. The moment you enter the water and you realize that you have to breathe through your mouth and not through your nose. I mean, 6 of the 7 people, we were 7 of us, 6 women and I don't know, please don't ask me how I ended up going with 6 ladies, but all of them panicked. They refused to go under the water. They were kicking, screaming, shouting, because when you first go under the water and it goes over your head and you're in a completely different world, you have to fight that rising tide of panic and say, I want to trust my training. What did my instructor tell me? At that time, it all goes out of the window. So, do one thing every day that scares you. I want all your students to write down all your fears. You could be scared of the dark. You could be scared of insects, animals, heights. Face your fears. That's the only way of doing it. I'm sorry, I'm beginning to sound like a regimental sergeant major, blame 3 generations in the armed forces. That's the only way you will grow, students. Face your fears and do one thing every day that scares you. Maybe it's the fear of public speaking. Maybe it's the fear of singing on stage. Maybe it's the fear of, maybe you're not good at mathematics. Maybe, you feel that you can't speak to girls, or vice versa. Address those fears, face them head on. Sorry, Dr. Basu, I got a little carried away with my response.
It's okay, sir. Okay, thank you once again,
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Samar
sir.
Singh Shekhawat, sir,
Thank you.
and Mr. Rajat Banerjee, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Thank
sir.
very
you.
much.
Good luck, students. Thank you, Shaheen. You did a
Yes.
super job, even though
Thank
this
you
was
so
your
much.
first time.
Yeah,
I
Yes.
think
Like
because
you said, I conquered my fear.
you studied fluid dynamics, I think you flowed in a very fluid way as well.
And first of all, thank you, Dr. Basu. And I would like to add is that, oops, yes, Mr. Summer and Mr. Rajat, it has been
Sorry, we've lost you, Shaheen.
Shaheen, there is a disconnection from your side.
The connection is bad, but thank you. I'm assuming she's saying nice things about us. So thank you for that, Shaheen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
I mean,
Shaheen.
we're really hopeful of having future sessions with you, Mr. Summer and Mr.
Yes,
Rajat.
thank you.
I'm sure our students have really enjoyed this session, and I would like to thank Dr. P.G. Ramesh, Kaziranga University, Fiki, and for this session.
Thank you.
For participation, and lastly, thanks again, Mr. Summer and Mr. Jay.
Can't hear you, Shaheen. I just want to, if the students can hear me, please feel free to reach out to Rajat and myself on LinkedIn with any questions you may have, any doubts you may have. I've answered a couple of questions on chat. Someone asked about aviation, etc. So please feel free to address your queries to Rajat and I on LinkedIn. Good luck. God bless. Stay safe. Stay well. This too shall pass. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Summer.
Thank you,
And
Samar,
thank
sir.
you, Mr. Rajat.
Thank
And
you. Thank you
it's
very
a
much.
great interaction. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ramesh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, Dr. Anil, I guess you want to take the attendance.